Hi there YouTube friends, Carlos Orisate, and welcome back to Mom's Greek Kitchen, the channel where I teach you my mom's Greek recipes in her memory. Today we are making Hamalia. Hamalia. They are a specialty from the Island of Skiathos, where my dad was born. They are his favorite. They are a filling made of breadcrumbs and walnuts and honey, orange zest and spices. And then folded into pastry and deep fried, and then dredged in icing sugar. They're quite fancy. They are very Christmassy because of all the flavors inside. And Mom learned this recipe from my yaya, my dad's mom. And she learned it on the island, I think, because they are specifically from Skiathos, from what I know. So they're quite an old recipe. So let's get started and we'll make them together. See you soon. Alright, we're going to start with the pastry for the Hamalia. In my bowl here I have 2 cups of flour. This is the same recipe that we used for the diples, and we're going to make them exactly the same way. So I have 2 cups of flour in here. I have another cup of flour on the side. I'm adding a half a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of baking powder. Give that a quick stir. And then I'm going to add 5 beaten eggs. And we're going to work this into a soft but not sticky dough. We want a dough that will be able to roll out later using the Greek rolling pin. So if it's too sticky, we'll have a real trouble with it. I'm going to go as far as I can go with the fork, and then I will switch to my hands. Alright. This is still pretty sticky. Alright, our dough is pretty much done. It's slightly sticky. We're going to wrap it in saran wrap or plastic wrap and stick it in the fridge for at least 4 hours. Overnight is usually what I tend to do. That's what Mom used to do. And then you just want it out about an hour before you're ready to roll it. Okay, so I'll be back with the next step. Alright, we're ready to start making our filling. So in here I have 1 pound of ground walnuts. That's actually 1 pound and 2 ounces because that's how much bread I had, but basically you want even amounts. And the bread is usually the one that's hardest to judge how much you're going to need because you have to cut off the crust and all that kind of stuff. So this is 1 pound, let's say, of ground walnuts. I'm going to add the zest of 1 orange, finely zested. I use a microplane for getting all the zest but none of the white. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of ground cloves. Now these can be adjusted later. You want a good heavy hand when you're adding the spices because that's all the flavorings you're going to get. But I don't want to overdo it. So I'm going to start with that amount and we'll add if we need to. So we're going to mix this because it's easier to mix into the walnuts than into the breadcrumbs first. And get the, it's basically the rind. You want to make sure it's mixed up well because it can clump. Okay, here I have the same amount of weight as the walnuts. This is fresh breadcrumbs, so they're soft, but you don't want like fresh bread. So what I usually do is I buy a couple of loaves of bread, a white bread, a good white bread, like not sandwich bread, whatever, but something like this is actually potato bread, but like a Italian baguette or Italian loaf or a French baguette. Something that has some substance to it. And I usually leave it a couple days uncovered so that it dries out a little bit. You want it a bit stale, you don't want it fresh because then it gets really gummy. But you don't want dry breadcrumbs because they won't soften and it's not a very nice filling. So we're going to incorporate our breadcrumbs into our walnuts. I'll do that in 2 stages so I make it less mess. And now, as you can see, it's a pretty loose filling. And we're going to bind it together so that it is actually scoopable and formable with honey. So this takes quite a bit of honey as well. So it's not a inexpensive pastry, but it's worth it. Mom would always buy honey in 15-pound buckets whenever she could, because we use a lot of honey in this and in melmakarna and ziplis and baklava and everything else. So honey is used quite extensively. All right, so we've got a pretty good mix here. So I'm going to start adding honey. And at the beginning, just add a whole bunch of, like a glop. That should start as well. Alright, and then we're just going to mix it. It will take a little bit of time because it's a lot of mixture. In Greece, on the island, they actually double this amount. So they call for 1 kilogram of walnuts and 1 kilogram of bread and so on. So I'm not going quite that crazy, but they also do these for weddings and other special occasions. So they're a celebratory pastry on Skiathos anyway. So that's definitely not enough honey. So this was a 1 kilogram, it's a 2 kilogram bottle, but it was half full. So this is 1 kilogram of honey approximately. And I have a second bottle here if we need it, which we probably will, but we'll see. Smells good. Spices, orange, and honey. Can't go wrong. Okay, we need more. So this is a 3 kilogram bottle. It's got just a little bit missing at the top. So we'll say, what, 2.5? I don't think I'll need this much, but just so we have an idea. Okay, I'm going to get my hands in now because that's the only real way to get this to all combine. Basically, you're going to knead it like you would any other kind of pasta type thing, or flour, or like a dough, I should say. I think that's going to be enough honey. Let's see. So just over 1 kilogram of honey, maybe 1.5. And it will all depend on how moist your bread is and that kind of thing. Maybe a thinner honey will go a little further than a thick honey. So it's all a matter of trial and error. Let's give this a taste to see if I have enough spices. We're good with the orange. I think it needs a bit more of the clove and the cinnamon. So I'm going to add another 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and another teaspoon of cloves, I think. Alright, I'm back and I have completed my filling. So I added a little bit more honey just to make it a bit stickier, so it stays together when you're forming the Hamalia, so they don't make a mess while you're trying to roll them up. I also added 3 more teaspoons of cinnamon and 1 more teaspoon of ground cloves. So that's 5 and 2 altogether. So 5 cinnamon, 2 cloves, the orange, the honey, the breadcrumbs, and the walnuts. So this is ready to go. I'm going to change my setup here and we're ready to roll out the dough and start forming them. Alright, I'll be back soon. Alright, we're back and we're ready to roll out our dough. So I've had the dough sitting out for a while. I've floured my surface. I'm going to flour the dough. I'm using the Greek style rolling pin, a pastry. And we're just going to open the filo, as they say in Greek, until it's a nice thin, 1/8 of an inch or less dough sheet. And then we're going to cut it into strips and start forming our Hamalia. Alright, we almost got it. This is probably going to be our last go round. Alright, we're going to call that done. I can see the grains of the counter underneath, so it's pretty thin. And now we're going to cut it into strips. So, easiest way to do it is with a pizza cutter, but a knife will work. And you want strips that are at least, I'd say, 2.5 inches or so. And in this case, it's a bit more more important to keep them the same size than it was for the leafless, because you're actually folding up a filling inside. So I'm going to be a little more careful. Alright, so we're ready to start filling our Hamalia. So I've got my pastry strips all cut and ready. I've got my filling ready. I've actually got my oil heating on the side here. I've made a few of them already. So my oil's at about 325. You don't want it too hot. You want them to cook gently, and you don't want them to get too dark. So that's one of the reasons we have the oil that low. We're going to take about a level teaspoon of filling, and we're going to put it in the corner here. Now I'm a righty, so I start with my right hand, and I pick up the right hand corner here, fold it so it's pointing up the middle of the strip of dough, and push down. So I've got a flat little parcel here, and you see that it sort of makes a point on the side here. You're going to take this flat side here, and you're going to make it run parallel to this flat side, like that. Okay, let me do that again. So this edge is going to run this edge. Okay, so we're going to go up like that. Now we're going to take this point. We're basically going to do exactly the same thing. This corner with this edge. Okay, so we're just alternating sides. And there is filling sticking out, so you're going to squeeze it down a little bit while you turn it, so that you've got a nice little tight package. And you're going to turn that one more time. So that's 3 flips altogether, not counting that first corner up. And then you're just going to cut it into your little triangle. Flip it over so you're on the loose side here. And you're going to put a toothpick in it to keep it from opening up. And then just put it down. You do not have to seal them completely. They don't really, leak out any of the filling into the oil. I usually trim the end off again, so I'm ready to go. I'm going to go a little closer so you guys can see a bit better what I did there. Sorry for the jiggling camera. Okay, not better? Yeah, I think so. Alright, so we've got our strip ready. We've got our filling. So it's about, not quite a teaspoon. Or not quite a full this one, but probably a level teaspoon if you're using a measuring spoon. We're going to take this corner or this corner, it doesn't matter which side, and you're going to make it so it points straight up the middle of your strip, and you're going to push it down. So it's about, you'd say about 1/4 inch or so thick. So now you've got your angle that we're dealing with. So this edge and this edge. So we're going to just make them parallel to each other. Okay? Now you've got another point on this side. Edge and edge. We're going to squeeze the filling in. You can either use your fingers, or I just basically lift up and push it down and flip it over one more time. And we're going to do it a 3rd time. So this edge and this edge. So that's 3 flips. Okay? Cut off your excess dough, flip it over, take a toothpick. This is the side that opens up, i.e. our last, the last flip over, right? And we're just gonna basically go from the middle to the point. And then we're just gonna drop it down. I'm gonna do one more. My strip here is getting a little narrow, so I'm gonna trim it off. All right. So our filling, make a little glob, try and keep it all together. Take the point, flip it up, push it down, edge to edge, edge to edge, and edge to edge. Here's our 3 folds. Cut it off. Toothpick to seal. And we're ready to fry. So my oil is at 324. Let's see if I can get this to work properly. All right, so we've got our oil here. It's 322 at the moment. I've got the fan on so it keeps moving around, but you don't want it too hot. And then you're basically just going to drop them in. 4 or 5 at a time, depending on the size of your pot. If you put too many, your oil drops way too low and then they take forever. And as soon as they start moving them. Because you want them to puff up as much as possible, and they only really do that when they're under the oil. Try and flip them. They like to stay on only one side though, usually. But do your best. You want them a very pale gold. Something along this color here. I don't know if that will come out well here. That's a good color. It's not very dark. You want them very tender. And if you overcook them, they get a little tough. Remember, these are the same phyllo as leaflets, but leaflets get a syrup coating which softens the dough a bit. This will be only icing sugar and any moisture from inside on the filling to soften the dough, so you don't want to overdo it. Dunk them under so they get nice color everywhere. Like I said, they don't really want to stay on the other side. You have to really work at it to get them to stay like that. Alright, I'm going to say these guys are done. And I'm putting them on a wire rack over a baking pan to catch any of the drips of oil. Alright, here we go again. Now when Mom, like I said, when they do them on the island and the way Mom does them, they're quite a bit bigger. So you're only going to get about maybe 2 or 3 in a pot this size, which of course takes longer to do the whole batch. Yeah. So since these again are for cookie platters for the holidays and stuff, I wasn't going to make them as big as they normally are. They're about double the size regularly, at least. Just keep moving them. Alright, take them out. They don't take very long. Keep your oil on the low side. And I'm just going to continue going until I've completed them all. Alright, and we'll be back then. Alrighty, we're back. So our next step is to coat them in the icing sugar. So we're going to take our Hamalia, we're going to pull out the toothpick, and I've got a tray here with icing sugar sprinkled on it. I'm going to count as we're doing this so I can tell you how many I got out of one recipe of the phyllo. But basically I'm going to pull all the toothpicks out, lay them all out, and then I'm going to give them a good heavy dusting of icing sugar. And then let them sit for a while, and then when I put them into the container that they're going to sit in, I will basically be burying them in icing sugar. And that's how they're usually kept, and then you sort of gently dig them out when you're ready to serve them. So I will be back. One thing I didn't mention was when you've cut your strips, you can stack your strips up together and then cover them with a lightly damp towel or a piece of plastic wrap or something so they don't dry out while you are shaping your Hamalia. Alright, so I'll be back at the end with a count and with the finished product. Alright, so we made 41 Hamalia out of that one batch of dough. These are icing sugared on this side. I'm going to flip them over when I put them into their container and cover them with more icing sugar. We used about a third of the filling, so I can make at least another 80. I'm pretty sure, but Dad loves these, so I will make a whole bunch of them for him. You can also freeze the filling. It also actually lasts pretty well in the fridge. It'll last at least a month in the fridge with no problem. So you can have it in there and make it up as you need it, sort of thing. In Greece, obviously they make a lot more since this is half the batch of filling. So I'm going to cut one in half so you guys can see inside. So there's my Hamalia. I'm going to zoom in a bit. So one Hamalia, plural is Hamalia. Alright, so we go through the pastry here, and that's our pastry. Oops, try that better. So we've got our filling, our nicely baked dough, and our icing sugar. Nice and tender. Yep, these will do. So thank you for watching, and I hope you try these, and if you do, I'd love to hear about it, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.